I wish I could say it was just a bad dream, but it was all too real. There we were, standing in the basement of that creepy old Victorian house, darkness closing in around us, when I heard it, a low, guttural growl that sent chills down my spine. That moment, right there, was the beginning of everything. Let me rewind a bit. It all started a couple of nights ago when my best friend Dave and I found ourselves house sitting for his aunt. She had this ancient Victorian place, complete with creaky floors and shadows that seemed to move on their own. The moment we stepped inside, I felt a weight in the air, like the house itself was watching us. Dave, on the other hand, was practically vibrating with excitement. "Dude, this place is awesome," he exclaimed, flinging himself onto a tattered couch. But I wasn't so sure. I had this gnawing feeling in my gut that we were stepping into something we didn't fully understand. Fast forward to our second night. We were sprawled on the living room floor, playing video games, when Dave casually mentioned the basement. "My aunt says no one goes down there. Says it's haunted," he said, half joking, but his tone was serious. I raised an eyebrow. This wasn't like him, he was the one always dismissing ghost stories. "Haunted? Seriously?" I laughed it off, but a shiver crept down my spine. I glanced toward the basement door, which loomed at the end of the hallway like a dark void. "Come on, Mike. Don't be a chicken," Dave challenged, a mischievous glint in his eye. I felt a wave of dread wash over me. Something about that basement felt wrong. Why hadn't anyone dared to explore it in years? But there was that look on his face, the look that said he wouldn't take no for an answer. Before I knew it, we were standing in front of the basement door. It looked ordinary enough, just an old wooden slab that had seen better days, but as we got closer, the air shifted. It thickened, pressing against my chest. I hesitated, wanting to back out, to just leave this place behind. But before I could voice my concerns, Dave shoved me forward. "You first, Mike." I grabbed the knob, feeling the chill radiate from it as I twisted it open. The door creaked, almost protesting, as it revealed a staircase that descended into an impenetrable darkness. My flashlight flickered, and doubt clawed at me. "This isn't worth it," I insisted, but Dave just grinned like a maniac. "What's the worst that could happen? Famous last words, right?" As we descended, the smell hit me like a slap to the face, rotten meat mixed with something worse, like the stench of decay that had lingered for years. I gagged, trying to suppress the urge to turn back. Dave chuckled nervously beside me, though I could hear the tremor in his voice. "Let's get this over with," he muttered, trying to sound brave. But then came the growl. It was low and guttural, echoing through the darkness, and it froze me in place. My heart raced as adrenaline surged through me. "Did you hear that?" I whispered, panic clawing at my throat. "Yeah," Dave replied, his bravado slipping. "Maybe we should." Before he could finish, a shadow darted past us. I barely caught a glimpse, a figure, something not human, slipping through the shadows. In that instant, all the horror stories I'd ever heard rushed back to me, and I felt the chill of fear wrap around my spine like icy fingers. I turned to bolt back up the stairs, but Dave grabbed my arm. "Wait," he shouted, and I could see the fear in his eyes. "What if it's just a raccoon or something?" But deep down, I knew this was no ordinary animal. As we stood frozen, the growling intensified, morphing into a low, rumbling laugh that echoed through the basement. We were not alone. Finally, in a surge of panic, I yanked my arm free and sprinted up the stairs, dragging Dave with me. We burst through the door, slamming it shut behind us, panting like we had run a marathon. "What the hell was that?" I gasped, heart pounding in my chest. Dave's face was pale, and I could see the realization dawning on him. "I don't know, man. But we need to get out of this house." We raced through the darkened hallways, and as we reached the front door, I threw it open, gasping for fresh air. The night was calm, but the terror of what we had encountered lingered. As we stepped outside, the adrenaline began to fade, leaving only the memory of the growl, the laughter, and the shadows that danced just out of reach. We never spoke of that night again, but as we left the house, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had followed us out, lurking in the dark corners of our minds, waiting for the next opportunity to strike. What really happened in that basement? Maybe it was just an animal or the echoes of our imaginations running wild. Or perhaps the old stories held a grain of truth, some darkness that should never have been disturbed. But I knew one thing for sure, some dares are better left untested. We should have never gone back down there. The door had slammed shut behind us, locking us in a nightmare that felt more like a cruel joke than an adventure. I can still hear the echo of that bang, the sound slicing through the heavy air like a knife. Let's rewind a bit. When we stumbled out of that basement the first time, we thought we'd escaped with just a scare. But the truth is, we hadn't really processed what we'd seen. Maybe it was the adrenaline, or the relief of being outside again, but deep down, we both knew we hadn't seen the last of whatever was lurking in that house. After pacing the backyard for a while, Dave's curiosity got the better of him. "Come on, Mike, it was probably just a trick of the light," he said, brushing off my concerns like they were dust. I felt a knot tighten in my stomach as I looked back at the house, its silhouette looming against the night sky. "Let's just leave. Please." But I should have known Dave better. He was always the one pushing the boundaries, the thrill seeker in our duo. What if we go back down and film it? We can show everyone we faced our fears. His excitement was infectious, even if it felt reckless. Before I could protest, he grabbed the flashlight and marched back inside. Now, here we were, descending once more. My flashlight barely sliced through the thick, dust-filled air as we stepped into the basement, the floor creaking underfoot like it was trying to warn us to turn back. The moment we hit the bottom, I was hit by the staleness, the oppressive weight of the shadows that felt thicker than before. Old furniture lay draped in sheets, and weird markings snaked across the walls, whispering secrets from a time long forgotten. "Dave, let's get out of here," I whispered, trying to sound casual, but the tremor in my voice betrayed my fear. I could feel the basement watching us, a living thing that thrummed with an energy I couldn't quite understand. But Dave was lost in his fascination, leaning closer to the walls, running his fingers over the strange symbols. "These look ancient, man. There's gotta be some history here," he murmured, almost to himself. I felt a cold sweat break out on my forehead as I scanned the room, the feeling of being observed growing more intense. Then it happened, a faint shuffle from the corner of the room. My heart stopped, and I whipped the flashlight around, the beam cutting through the darkness like a knife. That's when I saw it. Something tall and hunched, lurking in the shadows, its outline shifting, breathing, almost alive. I froze, my mouth dry, my instincts screaming at me to run. "Dave, we need to go." I grabbed his arm, but he brushed me off, stepping closer to the creature. "You see that?" he asked, his eyes wide with a mix of curiosity and terror. "Are you insane?" I hissed, panic clawing at my throat. I pulled him back, desperate to escape this nightmare. But it was too late. The basement door slammed shut behind us, the sound echoing like a gunshot, and a chill swept through me. I sprinted to the door, yanking on the handle, but it wouldn't budge. My hands shook as I banged against it, fear gripping my heart. I turned back, and that's when I saw it clearly. The creature was moving closer, its shape flickering like a glitch in reality, morphing from one terrifying form to another. It was like a shadow come to life, a nightmare embodied. "Mike! What the hell is that?" Dave's voice trembled, his usual bravado crumbling to dust. I could see it in his eyes, the genuine terror that matched my own. "I don't know, but we need to get out of here," I shouted, desperation clawing at my voice as I pounded against the door again, feeling the weight of the creature's presence behind us. In that moment, I realized something crucial. We weren't just facing a creature, we were facing whatever darkness this house held, whatever history had seeped into its walls. I took a deep breath, pushing down the fear, and turned back to Dave. "We have to find another way out. Maybe there's a window or..." Before I could finish, the creature lunged forward, its form solidifying into something grotesque. I barely had time to scream as it came at us, a mass of shadow and rage. Instinct kicked in. "Run," I shouted, grabbing Dave's arm, and we bolted toward the far corner of the basement, hearts pounding in our chests. We stumbled over old furniture, sending dust and debris flying, our flashlight beam flickering wildly. But the creature was relentless. It pursued us, its growls echoing through the cramped space, a sound that reverberated in my bones. Just as we reached what seemed like a dead end, I spotted a small window high up on the wall. "There," I yelled, pointing. "We can climb up." Without waiting for a response, I scrambled toward it, adrenaline coursing through my veins. I could hear the creature closing in behind us, a tangible darkness that threatened to swallow us whole. "Mike, hurry," Dave shouted, panic seeping into his voice. I reached the window and hoisted myself up, barely fitting through. "I'm almost there," I gasped, pushing my way through the narrow opening. I felt Dave's hands on my legs, propelling me forward as I kicked free of the basement's grip. With a final shove, I tumbled out onto the grass, gasping for air. I turned just in time to see Dave follow, his eyes wide with fear. But as he scrambled up, the creature lunged for him, its dark form erupting from the basement like a tidal wave. "No. I screamed, reaching out for him, but he was gone, swallowed by the shadows as the door slammed shut once more. I lay there, heart racing, the weight of reality crashing down around me. Dave was gone. The creature had taken him, and the truth settled in: whatever had lurked in that basement wasn't just a figment of our imagination. It was real, and we had awakened something that should have stayed buried. But as I lay on the ground, the echoes of that darkness still ringing in my ears, I couldn't shake the feeling that it was just the beginning. I had to know what had happened, what we had uncovered. The secrets of that house were far from over, and they would haunt me until I found the truth. I'd return, no matter the cost. Because I owed it to Dave. I had to face the darkness. I couldn't think. I couldn't breathe. The moment that door slammed shut behind us, I was trapped in a nightmare I never wanted to wake up from. My mind raced, desperately searching for logic in the face of pure horror, but there was nothing, just a creeping darkness that threatened to consume me. Let's rewind to that moment. Dave had been right beside me, his eyes wide with a mix of excitement and dread, but in an instant, that curiosity turned into paralyzing fear. I could feel the creature closing in, its presence suffocating and unnatural. "Dave, move," I shouted, but he stood frozen, feet glued to the ground, staring into the abyss of shadows that seemed to writhe with a life of its own. I could see the confusion and terror twisting his features, but there was no time to process it. Then it lunged. The creature's long, shadowy arms shot out, reaching for Dave. I was too late to react. Before I could even scream, it grabbed him by the arm. His terrified scream pierced through the suffocating silence of the basement, echoing against the walls like a death knell. "Dave!" I lunged forward, desperation flooding my veins, but trying to pull him away felt like trying to grasp smoke. The creature was impossibly strong, dragging Dave across the floor as if he weighed nothing. My flashlight flickered ominously, the beam cutting in and out, and for a moment, everything plunged into complete darkness. When the light flickered back to life, I was met with the chilling realization that Dave was gone. Just gone. The air thickened around me, and I felt a scream rise in my throat, but it got stuck there, choked by terror. I stood frozen, heart pounding so loud it drowned out every sound, every thought. Should I follow? Should I run? My body was paralyzed by fear, trapped in place as the silence pressed down like a heavy blanket. Dave's scream still echoed in my ears, haunting me. And then I heard it. A low growl emanated from the corner of the room, deep and primal. The creature lingered in the shadows, watching me, waiting. Its presence sent a wave of dread crashing over me. It was not done with me yet. I bolted for the door, pounding on it with everything I had, my fists striking the wood again and again. "Let me out," I shouted, desperation spilling from my lips, but the door wouldn't budge. It was as if the house itself was holding me captive, laughing at my struggle. Tears welled up in my eyes, blurring my vision as I screamed for help, but I knew no one could hear me. The basement felt like it was closing in, like the walls were alive, tightening around me, ready to swallow me whole. The growl deepened, and I could feel it resonate in my bones, a chilling reminder that I was not alone. I turned, desperate to face whatever horror was stalking me, but my flashlight flickered again, dimming, and for a moment, the creature was just a shadow in the dark. I stumbled backward, heart racing, and in that moment of terror, I remembered something. There had to be a way out, some other escape route. The memory of that small window flashed in my mind. It was my only hope. With renewed determination, I scanned the walls, looking for anything that might help me escape this nightmare. My flashlight flickered back to life, illuminating the cluttered space, and I spotted the window again, high up, just out of reach. But it was my only chance. I bolted toward the far wall, ignoring the creature's growls that seemed to echo in my ears. I climbed over the old furniture, heart pounding in my chest. Every sound felt amplified, the growl growing closer as I scrambled. I reached the window, jumping to grasp the ledge. My fingers clawed at the sill, and I pulled myself up. The basement felt alive, almost angry at my attempt to escape, and I could sense the creature closing in. With one last push, I heaved myself through the narrow opening, feeling the rough wood scrape against my skin as I squeezed out into the night. I fell onto the grass outside, gasping for breath, the cold air stinging my lungs. But as I rolled onto my back, panic washed over me. I was free, yes, but where was Dave? I turned to look back at the house, its windows dark and foreboding, and my heart sank. I had to go back. I couldn't leave him there. But the darkness felt heavier now, the air charged with something sinister. The thought of that creature lurking inside sent a fresh wave of fear through me. Yet, I knew I couldn't abandon my friend. "Dave," I shouted, my voice trembling, but the silence swallowed my words. The shadows loomed, thick and impenetrable, daring me to return. I needed a plan, a way to confront whatever had taken him. As I stood there, the weight of my decision settled on my shoulders. I had to go back, not just for Dave, but to uncover the truth behind the creature, the house, and the shadows that had ensnared us. Whatever was lurking inside was waiting for me to return, and I had to be ready. With resolve hardening in my chest, I took a deep breath and stepped back toward the door, knowing that I was walking straight into the darkness once more. This time, I wouldn't just be a bystander. I was going to confront the creature and the secrets of the old Victorian house, no matter the cost. I kicked the door with every ounce of strength I had left, a desperate move fueled by pure adrenaline. The wood cracked, splintering beneath my foot, and the door flew open with a violent swing. I didn't look back, I couldn't. Every instinct screamed at me to escape, to flee from whatever horror awaited in the shadows. As I scrambled up the stairs, the air thickened around me, almost as if the house itself was trying to drag me back into the abyss below. Each step felt like a battle, each creak of the floorboards a taunt from the darkness. My heart pounded in my chest like a war drum, urging me to hurry. I burst into the living room, gasping for air, my lungs burning with effort. But the silence that met me was deafening. Too silent. I slammed the basement door shut behind me, pressing my back against it as if that would somehow create a barrier against the nightmare lurking just beyond the wood. I collapsed onto the floor, shaking, trying to process what had just happened. My mind was a chaotic whirlwind of thoughts and emotions. Dave. He was gone. The image of him being dragged away flashed in my mind, his terrified scream still ringing in my ears. How could I explain this? No one would believe me, not even I believed it fully. I fumbled for my phone, hands trembling as I dialed 911. My voice quaked as I explained what had happened, but the words felt hollow, echoing in my own mind like a cruel joke. When the police finally arrived, they searched the house thoroughly, their skepticism palpable. They found nothing, no trace of Dave, no creature, just old furniture covered in dust and the remnants of shadows. "Are you sure you're okay, son?" one officer asked, his brow furrowed in concern, but I could see the doubt in his eyes. They left after an hour, shaking their heads, treating me like a kid who'd spun a wild tale to cover for something else. I was left alone, drowning in my own disbelief. The next morning, Dave's aunt arrived, her face a mask of distress and anger. She stormed into the house, her eyes blazing as she turned to me. "What did you do to my boy?" she demanded, her voice sharp and accusing. I tried to explain, to tell her everything, but my words tumbled out in a jumbled mess of fear and confusion. Then, she whispered something that chilled me to the bone. "This house has a history, you know. People who enter the basement. They don't come back." Her words lingered in the air like a curse, and I felt the weight of her gaze, as if she knew far more than she was letting on. All I could hear were Dave's screams, echoing in my head, drowning out everything else. I left the house that day, the walls closing in around me, and I swore I'd never return. But every night since, I can still hear him. His voice calls out to me from the depths of that basement, begging for help, echoing in the stillness of the night. I thought I'd escaped, but the truth is, I've never been free. The darkness of that house clings to me, and I know I'll always carry the weight of what happened there. No matter where I go, I can feel its pull, its whispers beckoning me back, reminding me of the horrors I left behind. The real nightmare isn't the creature that took Dave. It's the knowledge that I failed him. And deep down, I know I'll have to confront that darkness again, someday, somehow, because the echoes of the past refuse to let me go.